anybody want to do this with me?
All righty, guys. Okay, so I'm going to say hello to you guys. Cheers. Welcome to our next class, New York Cocktail Expo Online Week. Guys, I'm going to say cheers to you. We're having an amazing week. Go ahead and load up. Tell me what you're drinking. Tell me, load up the comment section. Let's get the chat going. Let's take a look at that. Where are you guys from? What are you drinking? What classes have you taken? My name is Matt Corey. I am the founder of New York Cocktail Expo. We're the premier spirit and cocktail expo of New York. We started in 2015 showcasing great bars, just having folks come and taste their cocktails in a big room pre-COVID. Taking every class. Cheyenne, thanks so much. Jesse from Texas. Guys, and then we had Rockey's Old Fashioned. Spencer's drinking a Rockey's Old Fashioned. That's great. Guys, keep popping up in the chat. Let me know where you're from. And guys, we started pairing up bars with spirit brands. The shows got bigger. And then, boy, last year, forget it, 2,000 people in New York with New York's best bars, Death and Company and the Aviary, Mother of Pearl. And now, hey, guys, for the last few years, we've been home to Best Cocktail of the Year for New York and the acclaimed Tiki Throwdown, which this year we're doing the Tiki To Go Down, commemorating to-go cocktails, cocktail kits, and that's New York's tropical cocktail competition. So we got Dave drinking an old fashioned and you at beach. Hey, greetings from North Carolina. Drinks later, Andrew. Absolutely. 50-50 rum martini from New York. Donna Crawbuck. That's right. I got a rum old fashioned right here. So guys, keep coming in and tell me where you are. So right now, this is going to be our final webinar for the week. However, we're going into the week of cocktail competitions. So if you want to see how to support those bars, New York bars, check out the best cocktail, the People's Online Choice Best Cocktail of the Year. And if you're a bartender, let me know. If you're a cocktail enthusiast, let me know. If you're a spirit enthusiast, let me know. Tell me what's going on in the comments, guys. We've got a great class. Who's excited about learning about aged spirits and how to make some amazing cocktails? Who's excited about it? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and break into introducing our drinking hard cider in Hudson Valley, into introducing our presenters. Bartender from New York City, Paula. I'm so happy that you made it, Paula. We got you in. We had a couple of Zoom things going on. A couple folks came in. We got it. You're in. Thank you so much. We work together as a community, and now more people are here. If you're a bartender, sign up for Best Cocktail of the Year and for the Tiki Throwdown of 2021 at nycocktailexpo.com. And of course, you can engage with all our spirit exhibitors now. So guys, without further ado, I want to introduce you to our honored presenters. Let's go ahead and start with our first presenter. Alvaro Plata is the Gonzalez Baez brand ambassador, born and raised in the Sherry town. He's been traveling these past years by the hand of sherries, Brandy Jerez, and different spirits produced by the family winery from Jerez, visiting the best bars in Europe and America, sharing the beauties of this particular type of wine. And as a certified sherry educator, he's going to share all of the hidden secrets of one of the most iconic and styles of wine in the world, and the influence of the sherry cask in other liquids as whiskey or brandy de Jerez. So without further ado, please guys, make some noise in the comments for Alvaro Plata. Hey, Alvaro, cheers to you.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Matt.
Hey, how's it going? Welcome. Say, guys,
Good.
Say hello to Alvaro in the chat. Woohoo, we got Jesse. How you doing, Jesse? Hi from Vienna.
Vienna.
Hi, Alvaro. Cheers from Bill. That's great, guys. So we're going to get on to our next presenter with a quick intro, you guys. Anybody take the sous vide class? Did you guys were any of the sous vide class we had on December 4th? Yep, December 4th. That's right. Sous vide class with Eamon Rockey, you guys. That was so cool. He's back again today, going to be making some great cocktails. So Eamon Rockey, he's the creator of Rockey's Botanical Liqueur. He's the veteran beverage director at the Michelin-starred Bentley and our world-renowned bartender. So make some fire for Eamon, you guys, in the chat. Give it up for Eamon. Welcome back. Cheers.
What's up, everybody? Great to see you again. Spencer, I'm happy to hear you're drinking Rockies on your end of the line. Great to be here, especially back with Alvaro. We had a legendary class last time. This is the second of many more, I'm sure.
Absolutely. You know what, guys, we're gonna have a lot of questions today going on. So please start, while we got these two guys on hand, a lot of knowledge in the room. Eamon is a legend.
Bayat's here. What's up, dude?
So we're gonna have a lot of questions today for our presenters. I'll be fielding some of your questions, you guys, as long as they're relevant to what's being spoken about. I'm gonna go ahead and get your questions over to our presenters, but we will have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, so you guys can ask general questions and we'll hang out with you for a bit, but we will be fielding those questions. So without that, I'm going to hand it over to Eamon, who's going to talk a little bit about this webinar and the spirits and aged spirits, and then over to Alvaro to give us a general overview and start getting to some of these spirits. You guys ready for the cask, Hidden Secrets of Aged Spirits? I'm sure you are. So with that, I'm going to say cheers. Cheers, Alvaro. Cheers, Eamon. Thank you, guys. I'll be watching. Have fun, everybody. And I'll see you in a bit for some questions. Cheers to you.
I've never been more ready for anything in my whole life. If I can just point out, after having been with the New York Cocktail Expo in one role or another, as a judge, as a presenter, getting to see so many familiar names popping up, it feels great. The last several months have been tough, and I miss a lot of people that matter a great deal. And seeing some of the names popping up just now that are amongst that group feels so special. So thank you to all of you. It's an honor to be here. With regard to this seminar specifically, this webinar specifically, what I love about it is that getting to try these incredibly unique spirits that had it not been for this webinar and this relationship, I don't know if I would have found them quite as quickly. So in that way, I feel honored. They're spectacular. But secondly, it's a great deal of discovery for me too. And I was chatting with Alvaro about this a few minutes ago, that, getting to know whiskeys and brandies and, agave distillates, et cetera, from around the world, these are unique and special to themselves, right? So getting to learn from the master himself about them, and also having whipped up some drinks with them, it's a really cool thing. So I feel privileged to be presenting a few drinks this evening that are delicious, and I hope that you make it home as well. But also to sort of be in the theater to a degree as well, and to be learning about them firsthand here and now with you. So with that said, I think that to just speak to casks and that role that they play, depending on the base spirit, depending on the ingredient that serves as the fuel for the base spirit, whether it's cane or grain or grape or fruit of some other kind or agave, right, that feeds into a distillate, if it is going to hit a barrel, the question for me is always, as I evaluate quality spirits, is the barrel bringing something to the table, or is the barrel muting something or pulling something back that is in the distillate and rounding it out, right? And that is something that's really interesting to me, because like when you taste an off the still white whiskey that's intended for bourbon, it's not very delicious, right? I've had the pleasure of tasting a lot of bourbons before they hit the barrel. They're white whiskeys, right? And they don't have a tremendous amount of character. They're really rough. I think my cat is making a slight cameo here. Mine.
Pay attention.
That's probably not the last time it's going to happen, but he's amazing. But white whiskey, before it gets to the barrel for bourbon, doesn't taste delicious. It's really rough. It's really aggressive. There's not a whole lot of corn character. There's a lot that needs to happen, right? And when it hits the barrel, and that really is the craft of the cellar master, right? To move the barrels around, to rotate them, to hit the right amount of age and time, to proof it down to the place that it really sings and speaks to the character, not only of the grain of the corn and of the wheat and of the barley, or whatever the whiskey has in it that makes it special, but also of the skill of the aging master, right, of the cellar master. Then you have on the other side of the spectrum cane distillates in many cases, and agave distillates in many cases, that are often very robust and expressive of their ingredients, right, whatever it may be, and the barrel often will mellow those flavors out. So many añejo tequilas, from my perspective, the agave characteristics and qualities are really pulled back on, and you get a much rounder, richer, mellower flavor profile that sort of mutes to a degree and softens the agave influence. So getting to know these distillates a bit and experiencing them as barrel and fruit and grain and all of the different sort of qualities. These are kind of, for me at least, somewhere in the middle where they're expressive of their original ingredients or of their original wine, of their original distillate, but also very much of the cask, of the barrel. And it's a very unique and very cool experience. And with that said, I turn this part of the presentation right over to Alvaro, and I'm gonna shut up.
No, it's always a pleasure, obviously, to listen to you and obviously the creation that you are going to be sharing, which is highly appreciated. Therefore, people can reproduce it at home, including myself, obviously. I have here, obviously, Gonzalez by Spirits that we'll be using today, your beautiful and delicious Rockey that I have just here to show the versatility that they can show together. Today, I think that what we had in mind, and we agree with Matt, in organizing this webinar, was trying to offer to the people how important in the spirits making, and also even if you want to talk about even the wine making, is the cask that you're using. When you go to the spirits, it is in, I would say that even a bit more complex by the hand that you will decide which type of cask are you using, which is different type of wood, but also different type of wine or liquor that has been there before. The ex-bourbon cask, ex-sherry cask, ex-red wine cask. At the end, all of them will have an influence in the base. And we try, and obviously having Imon as an expert cocktail maker, mixologist, so I'm not sure how you would like to be introduced in that part. We can somehow link that the importance of understanding that process, which is absolutely difficult, and the experts are there for making a success of them. On the other side, another type of expert, which is following similar process, which is building a cocktail, thinking what you have in the base, which additions will you have to have a result, which is a little bit similar, in my opinion. When you're thinking, I'm going to have a whiskey, that it will be this composition, whatever percentage of grain or malt or the base that you want to use. I'm going to keep it for a few years in this type of cask. I will then transfer it to another one. I may even change the location where the whiskey is aging, as we do with Nomad. And then everything, every step that I'm making, it will be to conclude the process with the result that the master distiller, master blender want to have. If we think in the same way when building a cocktail, it will make sense to understand very well every ingredient that we add and understanding what they are going to be adding to the final drink. And of course, today, I'm sure that that part will be absolutely clear. That's your side of having all these details together. I'll do my best to share as well what we do, how we treat the wood, where we source our cask. I'm sure that majority of the people that is following us, they know that the sherry wine is a type of wine that will not just be an excellent type of wine, fortified wine from the south of Spain, but also the cask that we use for aging the sherry will be absolutely jewel that then whiskey producer, rum producer, gin producer, even vodka, vermouth, liquors in different type will really would like to use this type of cask. Also, some former port wine casks are very important in this style of making. So that is the idea today, that hopefully people can also join, make question. Matt is, as he said at the beginning, handling all this question in order to make this interactive and trying to make it very interesting, and we all get something after this 1.5 hours that we're going to be sharing all this information. Starting by the beginning, I'm gonna just give a few details about what we do. I'm gonna start with the whiskey because we want to give some explanation, enjoy watching the cocktail creation that Imon has prepared, and then we'll be coming with some more information. But this guy that I have here is a clear example of the importance of what I explained. And now it's even covering my face, which I think that is a winning for me. But this Nomad Outland whiskey is a whiskey that we produce in Scotland, is using 3 different types of casks during the aging process, and then is finished not in Scotland, but in the south of Spain, in Jerez. It's a very innovative style of whiskey because it's kind of breaking the unwritten rules of the whiskey making because of this process of changing the location where it's aging. But again, as we said before, everything is done with a purpose. Everything is done with an idea at the end. And our idea, as a Gonzalez Villas, being a sherry house producer since the beginning of the 19th century, where we have been obviously selling our sherry wine, but also our sherry cask for using in whiskey producer in Scotland or in different part of the world, we said, why don't we make our own whiskey and we give the importance to the sherry cask that whiskey producers in the north of Europe are giving to this style of boot. So that's why we started thinking in this whiskey that took us a few years to develop, thinking that first of all, we wanted to have something balanced, but with a sherry DNA very present. That's why when combining forces with the master distiller of White and McKay, Mr. Richard Patterson, master blender of our house, Antonio Flores, and Luis Miguel Trillo, our master distiller for the brandy, and also in this case, collaborating for Nomad, they started to think in all those influence, in all those details, coming up with a composition in the whiskey that is going to be 40% malt, 60% grain. Majority of the whiskeys, more than 30 whiskeys selected to make the blend of this Nomad, are selected from the Speyside area, but also we have a little bit of lowland influence and a little bit of highland in this selection that we are making from different producer. This combination, this 40% malt, which for those of you that are a bit familiar with the blended whiskey produced in Scotland, is a percentage considerably higher than average. It could be around 20-25% malt, and the rest will be different composition of grain. Here, we follow this process because now we are thinking what is coming next, and we are going to have, or these whiskeys in the different distilleries will have an average of 5 to 8 years of aging in ex-bourbon cask as the first stage. Then after making the blending, when we decide the blend that we have for Nomad, or when it was decided, now it's coming and aging after the blending. This is very innovative because in Scotland, majority of the blended whiskeys are not aging after blending. They age, they blend, and they bottle. In this case, not all of them, but majority. In this case, we have two different type of wood coming after the blending process that we make. For now, all of this is happening in Scotland by separating the distilleries and together 3 years in ex-Oloroso sherry cask. I'm sure that, Imon, do you remember this guy, Alfonso Oloroso, which is our dry sherry, 100% Palomino Fino. What can we find in this cask? Starting by the beginning, the bourbon cask, you will notice these notes of vanilla being present, rounding this character of the whiskey that is starting. Now, when we are adding up the ex-Oloroso sherry cask, we are bringing a cask, which is a 600 liter capacity. That's actually a good size for this cask. What we have inside is a lot of influence of the wine that it was before. Nutty flavors, intensity, the toasted notes that we will find. We'll get notes of vanilla. Those casks has been used for such a long time, maybe 15, 20 years aging sherry cask before we go for the whiskey aging. At this point, and before I finish with this explanation, we'll see the cocktail. In this case, we can make this process in a very interesting way. And then we go with some more interesting details of Nomad. What we have is an extraction, very important. Keep in mind that when we have Nomad aging in Scotland, it's a 65% alcohol by volume. At that percentage of alcohol, the process of alcoholysis, which is this extraction that the proper alcohol will make, is not just extracting character from the cask, but liquid. You guys need to think that in a sherry cask, after empty that cask, when it's empty of wine, still we have approximately 10 to 12 liters of pure sherry that is in the boot that remain wet inside. A high ABV spirit inside at 65% will extract this character, will add this liquid, and is giving this strong character to Nomad Outland whiskey. When the whiskey is almost ready, we are going to wait a little bit. Imon, will you share the cocktail? And then I continue with the touch that we have at the end so people can also understand why Nomad have this finish that is that interesting.
Absolutely. I think it's delicious. It's a very special spirit and one that I was really excited to taste and also excited to make a cocktail with. So the first drink we're going to make, and actually I should say all of the drinks we're going to make are decided riffs on classics. Some of them are a little bit farther removed than others, but ultimately they are definitely rooted very strongly in classic cocktails. So if I may, before we dive too far into the drinks, just to orient folks to an ingredient that's very near and dear to my heart. For those of you who I'm meeting for the first time right now, and I hope we do stay in touch, I make a spirit called Rockey's Liqueur. I make it here in Brooklyn. It's one that I'm very proud of and excited about. It's been on market for about 2 years. I'm excited to see it here in Brooklyn as well as in Miami there with Alvaro. And the goal for me with this spirit was to be able to highlight and showcase any other flavor profile, whether we're mixing with brandies or whiskeys, white spirits, dark spirits, champagne, even beer in the right context. That's the goal for this spirit, to be able to lift other flavors and showcase the things that make them special in stirred cocktails, shaken cocktails, spritzes, you name it, punches, etc. So having a diverse array of different flavor profiles here, using different fortified wines, distillates, etc., from grain and grape alike, that's really the focus of and the goal of my spirit, is to highlight them and to show what they do well. If you have a bottle on your end, which I hope you all do, I'd love to just pour a splash and give an explanation of what's in the bottle. As a liqueur, it is a little sweet by itself, but there's a lot of acidity that comes from fresh citrus. You know, lemon, lime, orange, mostly lemon is the acidifying component of this, with pineapple and apple to really give richness and a foundation for the other flavors. And then for complexity and minerality, I use both green and black tea. There's only about 12% alcohol in this from a neutral American grain spirit. And that really is, in the right proportions, the foundation of what this spirit is. Delicious on its own, but really designed, again, to showcase other flavors. So if you have a bottle kicking around in your end, please raise a glass. It's a pleasure to be here with you and drinking this spirit together. And if you don't, feel free to go to my website and pick up a bottle, rockysmilkpunch.com. Thank you very much, New York Cocktail Expo, for that as well. And if you don't have a drizzly around you that carries it, absolutely, just through my website, you can use that function as well. But light, bright, refreshing, super fun. The first cocktail is a play on a Manhattan, and I thought that was really appropriate for the whiskey in this bunch. You know, so we're sort of like playing with Manhattan, Rob Roy sort of territory here. For the drink, we're going to start with 2 ounces of the Nomad whiskey. Pretty standard pour for a Rob Roy or Manhattan style cocktail. I also think it's interesting too that, you know, this, while Scotland is sort of the birthplace and perhaps the spiritual home of this whiskey, a lot of classic ryes, some of the best known ryes and bourbons as well, American whiskeys, actually spend time in sherry casks before they're bottled. So in that way, this has a lot of sort of spiritual resonance and authenticity for this style of cocktail too. So we go with 2 ounces of the Nomad whiskey, 3/4 ounce, I think you'll all recognize this, the Gonzalez Bias La Copa red vermouth or sweet vermouth, 3/4 ounce of that, 3/4 ounce of Rockey's Liqueur. The idea here is that we're essentially splitting the sweet vermouth pour with Rockey's and the sweet vermouth. And there's, again, a lot more acidity here than you would find in a traditional sweet vermouth, including the Gonzalez Bias. And for that reason, they really balance each other in a beautiful way. There's richness and weight and vanilla coming from the whiskey and the sweet vermouth, but a lot of fresh fruit and apple and citrus coming from the Rockies. So you end up having a beautiful balance between the two. In my opinion, Angostura bitters is a must-have. At least some sort of aromatic bitters is a must-have for a Manhattan-style cocktail. I think Angostura is the classic for a reason. It performs incredibly well and really does harmonize all of those flavors together beautifully. So 2 dashes of Angostura bitters, 3/4 ounce Gonzalez Bias sweet vermouth, 3/4 ounce of Rockies, and 2 ounces of the Nomad whiskey, simply stirred over ice. I also like this as a good opening cocktail because it really kind of packs a wallop. You know, it's a spirit-forward drink. It's assertive in terms of its alcohol content and also its flavor profile. In the same way that, you know, starting with a martini really feels good, I think starting with a Manhattan for this lineup also is a nice way to go.
I love the touch of the Rockies that bring this point of acidity and balance it out very well, as you said.
Yes.
Great.
100%. The tea, I think that complexity of the tea, it helps it to sort of maintain its place as a grown-up spirit, if you will. You know, if it's all fruit and all citrus, it ends up just being kind of light and bright and tutti fruity and not necessarily very complex. The tea sort of brings it back to a place where it's a grown-up beverage, if that makes sense. So giving this a good stir over the ice for chill and dilution. With a spirit like this, or with a lineup of spirits like this, and a cocktail of this application, dilution is really important. Sometimes people think that just making things cold is the goal with stirring. You actually really want to dilute. You want to make sure that enough water is brought into the mix here that it sort of unlocks the nuances of especially the base spirit. And that's why a lot of really great whiskey tasters will actually sip whiskey with a little bit of water added to it, you know, so that they can actually start to experience the nuance below the alcohol content, right? So giving it a chill and dilution stir and pouring it right over the fresh ice in the rocks glass. Nice pour just to the top. And I'm going to cut an orange twist, a nice orange twist here. The flavors are pretty robust here. I think in one of our previous seminars, I talked about how much I like sometimes smaller twists for various reasons. In this case, we have a lot of very robust flavors. I'm totally happy and comfortable with this full orange twist here, expressing the entirety of it over the drink, giving it a little rim and dunking it into that cocktail. Cheers, Alvaro.
Cheers. Looks absolutely amazing.
Not making cocktails on your end?
I will be able to do it because I have all the things in front of me, but I didn't set up the bar. I'm just here sitting today. I'm being lazy today. But, well, you know, I have to tell you that this last weekend that is just around the corner, I was enjoying Rockies on a sherry cobbler with the base of Tio Pepe, and I just love it because it was adding a small touch of sweetness, but a small touch of acidity, all the flavors inside, matching that well with the Tio Pepe, and just adding whatever fruit you may have in that profile. It makes a super cool drink, low ABV, refreshing. I don't want to make anybody jealous, but I'm right now in South Florida, in Miami, where I live. So the weather here is absolutely spectacular. So there is no winter here, as you can imagine. So yeah, I think that this drink is absolutely amazing, and everybody have received the recipe, so there is no excuses to taste it. So I really invite everybody to give a taste for that.
Cool.
Great.
Matt, do we have any questions so far? Or should we check in between drinks with you?
Well, thanks. That looks great, man. I am having a drink. So cheers to you. I do have I have a comment. So I sadly can't get Rockies in Vienna. Someone said. So there you go. Gonna have to work on that one, huh?
Yes.
Love to get Rockies out there. Let's scroll through. I think right now folks are paying attention. Bell Mead finish in a sherry cask is one of my favorites. The sherry really smooths out a great bourbon. That's Mark. Cheers to you, Mark. Cheers to Brian Weber back again for a great class. Yeah, you guys, once again, chime in with any of your questions. We'll go ahead and read them off. But yeah, take it away if you want to talk about the next spirit or keep continuing making drinks.
Yeah,
that sounds good to me. Cheers, guys.
Thank you, Matt. Perfect. Yeah, we're gonna finish with the last details of Nomad, of our whiskey, because we didn't finish the whole process, and I was just waiting for the end to share all these small details. I'm still in the camera, right? Yeah, it was okay. Perfect. So we stopped after two different type of cask, and this is important because until that point, everything was happening in north of Europe, in Scotland. In even Gordon is where the Nomad was spending these 3 years in ex-dry sherry Oloroso cask, plus the beginning, obviously, that it has the aging in ex-bourbon cask. What is happening now? Now is a moment to think that the influence of the cask is clearly present in the whiskey inside, but also we wanted to give a different touch, and we wanted to go, let's say, beyond what we were thinking at first. And we transferred the whiskey from Scotland down to the south of Spain, there in Jerez de la Frontera, my hometown, where the sherry wine is produced and where we finished Nomad whiskey. For another 12 months, that means 1 extra year, Nomad whiskey will be aging in former Pedro Jimenez sherry cask. I'm sure that some of you know already that the Pedro Jimenez is the sweetest style of sherry. You can see it here. It could be up to 350, 380, even 400 grams of residual sugar per liter wine in a natural way. We sun-dry the grapes before going for a controlled fermentation to end up the process by having a long time aging in sherry cask. And this is completing the process. We need to think in a few things when we are thinking of this process of aging, because obviously and luckily, as I wrote up in Spain, in Jerez, the weather in Jerez is very different from Scotland. Hopefully nobody is offended from Scotland about that word, but it's warmer, the sun is more present. We still have humidity, but in a different way. We're located very close to the Atlantic, actually in between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. We're there in that special point called the Strait of Gibraltar. But the extraction is different. The temperature that we will have, although controlled temperature, because of the similar process that we follow for the sherry, will be around 22 Celsius approximately. But now what is extracting is a lot of character of the PX combined with the American oak barrel. Then in a few minutes, when talking about Lepanto, I'm gonna have a few words that may be interesting from one of our cooperates that gave us, or where we supply or source our cask, that they are purchased here in the States, in different states. They are gonna have a process of drying in order to do the shipment. Then they will have another process of drying, depending which part of the cask will be, either the estate or the tops. You know that the estate need to bend a little bit more. The tops will need to resist a lot of the weight because of the how we display the barrels in the winery. So there is a lot of interesting points about this making of the sherry cask. But for now, what I think that is more important is to understand that in Nomad whiskey, it has been the influence of the blend that we are using. I remind 40% malt, 60% grain, majority from the space side, although some of the regions of Scotland are present in those whiskeys that they selected, 30 different whiskeys, once again, starting in ex-bourbon cask by separate, then after blending ex-oloroso sherry cask, and then in Jerez, ex-Pedro Jimenez cask. Approximately almost 10 years will be the whole process, extracting from different cask, different character. When we are using Nomad, when we are enjoying Nomad, we need to play to discover, to find the different notes, the base of the whiskey. Matt, here you are. Sorry.
It's like if I pop up, it's like boom. There's a question about what you're talking about, and okay. I just want to get in while you might be able to speak to it, right? So Mikhail says, so does the Nomad finish in a Solera style like a sherry will be? That's from Mark.
Good question, Mark. Thank you for that question. No, in this case, different. As we just have 1 year, we will not follow the Solera and Criadera system. But with Lepanto, the brandy, is brandy de Jerez, we have to follow it. And then we will explain how we make it because it's mandatory. This whiskey doesn't have to follow that process. What we do is a selection of different PX casks that will be used for different batches of Nomad. But then we also will replace for new casks because, as I said before, the extraction that the whiskey, when it's arriving to Jerez, is still 65% alcohol by volume. Then there will be a hydration down to 41.3. But at that point, the extraction is very intense. If we keep using the same PX sherry cask during few years, during a few batches, the first whiskey that we are putting in contact with the cask will have extraction with a lot of character. But after using it a couple of times, 2-3 times, it will not have the same impact. So the product will not be the same. It's a great question because it makes sense to think that it will have this consistency, but it's a different process here, but it will happen in the Lepanto. Great, thanks.
So Alvaro answered your question. He said, "Great, thanks." There you go. As we have a beautiful sip. I can't wait to have some myself. Take it away. Cheers.
Great. So, I'm going to finish with Noma with the last comments before I give again Imon the camera to offer us a different cocktail. Just to finish, this is what is Nomad about. This is why it was important for us to think and to make tests because, as you know, when we came up with Nomad, it was not a project of a couple of years. It took some time to send different samples, to experience with different type of cask using fino cask, amontillado, oloroso, palo cortado, sweet Pedro Jimenez, changing the order as well because it's not the same. having Fino and Palo Cortado, that having Oloroso and PX, having PX in Jerez or having PX in Scotland. This process was definitely complex, but I think that it was worth, because it proved very well how important it is to think about what we do and how we can transfer that to the cocktail making. Even was explaining, I'm using the base of Nomad, thinking in the character of Nomad that it has, where the PX will be present, vanilla, dates, it will have some toasted note coming through, toffee, honey. I'm gonna have some sweet vermouth, which is gonna bring me similar notes, but some bitterness. But it is said that why not to have a point of acidity by Rockies, the different flavors that Rocky is having, this fruity character that will be linked with the base of Nomad. I think that this is what is important, Raymond, to think about all those details, not just when making spirits. I'm not making the spirits, luckily for our company, so there is expert making it. But sometimes when I'm trying to make cocktails, I try to think in a similar way, understanding how it is, breaking down what is in every bottle, and then putting all together with sense.
I completely agree with you. And, that's a really perfect segue, honestly, into this next drink, because it's sort of a play on a Boulevardier cocktail. And a Boulevardier cocktail, in its most simplest form, traditionally, is a whiskey Negroni. Again, very, very general there. I hope I'm not offending any Negroni fans or Boulevardier fans by saying so, but that's always the way I think about it. And this is kind of taking that inspiration and bringing it to a new place, a new home. Boulevardiers are amazing cocktails. I think that, the Nomad obviously is a whiskey that speaks in the language in some ways of the barrel, the brandy barrel that it's aged in, the wine barrel it's aged in. And we're now coming into 3 brandies that have a richness and a robust flavor profile that I think definitely enables them to behave and dance and sort of speak their message in much the same voice as a whiskey might, a very dark spirit, robust, rich spirit. So for that reason, I thought that a Boulevardier would be a lot of fun. It's a great cocktail for the season. It is dark, traditionally made with sweet vermouth and a robust cocktail, no doubt, but it has a really refreshing quality. As bitter as Campari is, I always think of it as being extremely refreshing, really bracing, and a perfect way to begin a meal or to begin an evening or to drink several of throughout the course of a night. So I thought to myself that using a Boulevardier as a starting point and then growing it into a new direction with the González Bias brandy, as well as the cream sherry, would be a ton of fun. And for me too, to sort of reference back to where Alvaro landed the conversation, I think that, sort of preconceived notions or sort of like commonly accepted themes are a great way to build a drink sort of intuitively, right? And cream sherry, a lot of people think that there's dairy in cream sherry because it's called cream sherry, but in fact, the cream refers to the sweetness of the sherry, in the same way that crème de mûre, crème de violette, crème de framboise, etc. Crème de cassis is probably the most famous crème in the world. There's no dairy, there's no cream, there's no milk added to these things. The crème refers to the sweetness of the beverage, right? And in the same way, cream sherry doesn't have any milk added to it. It's simply the creamy, sweet richness of the sherry. And one of my favorite desserts of all time was made by a chef years and years and years ago that I worked with, and it was very simple. It was a Campari ice cream, essentially, a very light Campari ice cream that was served with strawberries in season, like really sweet, beautiful, refreshing, tart, but very sugar forward, very ripe strawberries with this bitter Campari cream, ice cream. And it was just perfect exactly as is. 2 components, both pink, both refreshing, both sweet. And so I thought to myself, cream sherry, what does that evoke? How does it make me feel? What does it taste like? There's a sort of raisinated quality. There's a caramel quality, a toffee quality, a sort of vanilla quality to cream sherry at times, but there's still acidity. There's freshness there. And for that reason, I love it with Campari. And as I started playing with these ingredients together, it came together very, very naturally. So enough talking. This cocktail I'm calling Along the Avenue for no other reason than I think it was fun to take a walk outside of the boulevard, the Boulevardier. 1.5 ounces of Lepanto 12-year brandy, sherry brandy de Jerez. We have 3/4 ounce the Solera 1847 cream sherry. Again, that beautiful, sweet but not too sweet, bright and refreshing while still rich cream sherry. We have 3/4 ounce of Rockies, kind of doing the job, if you will, of those bright, refreshing strawberries in that dessert, right? There's acidity here, really, really refreshing. And then to give that backbone of bitterness, 1/2 ounce of Campari liqueur. You know, Boulevardiers typically are finished with an orange twist, and I was making these as I do, just sort of playing around, and I found that a lemon twist, for me at least, really finished the cocktail more appropriately. There's a more fresh quality to the brandy, and also, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of citrus here, and it's mostly lemon. So finishing this cocktail with a lemon twist felt more appropriate and was more integrated. It felt more balanced. So this drink, honestly, of the 4 we're making tonight, that are sort of riffs on classics, a step or 2 away from the classic, is probably the one that I think is just, you could drink 4 or 5 of them, one after the other. It's absolutely delicious, totally in balance, and a lot of fun. So for those of you who are thinking of mixing some of these up at home, I would strongly suggest that you try one of these first. I'm going to serve this up. You know, the first drink we served on the rocks, I think that a Manhattan is awesome on the rocks or up. I'm not criticizing either, but for me, the sort of bright and crisp, refreshing quality of any drink with a bit of Campari in it, whether it's a Negroni or a Boulevardier, they can be really, really tasty when served up because you're sort of obligated to drink them more quickly. And I do believe that that's a sincere factor. Drinking it more quickly, you gotta get it while it's cold. There's an old quote: you want to drink the cocktail while it's still laughing at you. You know, when you shake it and you pour it and it's still fresh and it's alive, or you stir it and you pour it, it's alive. You know, drinking it while it's really crisp and cold it's a big deal. It's important. And I think, again, that lemon twist brings that freshness that you wouldn't have otherwise. You know, you don't get that with an orange twist. So this cocktail is one of my favorite of the lineup tonight. Definitely a riff on a Boulevardier cocktail, but kind of deserving of its own home for sure. Cheers.
Cheers.
Man, that looks very good. I'm jealous.
Yum.
I know Eamon makes a great cocktail. Good on you, sir. Thank you so much for that demonstration. That looks wonderful. I do have some questions if you guys would allow me to read a few. Thanks so much. So yeah, let's go through that. Are you going to be distributing Rockies outside of New York and Miami in the future, Eamon?
That's your sweet buns, Matt. So right now, Rockies, and thank you to whomever asked that question. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it.
That is Dave. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dave. You know, from just really quick, and I won't soapbox too long, but from a personal note, you know, being able to share this spirit that is kind of my baby, a labor of love, for the last year, for the last 8 months, has been really tough. So opportunities like this, forums like this, are immensely impactful and have been incredibly crucial. So thank you for taking the time to taste and talk and also ask questions just like that. Rockies is distributed in New York, New Jersey, Florida, California, Wisconsin, Illinois, Colorado, Massachusetts, and Mexico. I might have missed one, but I don't think so. So I'll actually, anybody who's tuning in from Mexico, I'll be in Monterrey, Mexico City, and Acapulco for the next 2 weeks, sharing this with people, doing events, doing pop-ups, etc. Socially distanced, of course, very responsible, but nonetheless doing everything I can to share the story with people. So if you live in one of those states or countries that I just mentioned, you can absolutely get Rockies. Talk to your local bartenders, talk to your local retail shop owners, wine and spirit shop owners. Let them know that that it's available, and I will happily do all of the legwork. I'll work my butt off for you. I promise to get the spirit to your neighborhood. And if for whatever reason you're not in one of those states, just go to my website. There is a purchase button. There's a buy now button that you can certainly purchase through. And if you're one of those states that doesn't ship to, email me, Instagram, whatever. I promise you, I will get you a bottle. I promise you. So just reach out. Let me know how I can help. Thank you.
That's awesome. And I want to say, I'm going to go ahead and post in the chat again. We have a link that you guys can go. You can buy Lepanto, you can buy Nomad, you can buy Rockies. You can see the PDF read-alongs of some of the class today. And we're going to send you a follow-up email with a list of all of the places that you can get Nomad, Lepanto, and Rockies as well. See stores in your area. So everyone's going to be that, and we're just going to connect everybody. So my next comment and question is going to be for Alvaro from Mark. What's going on, Mark? Says, when you move the spirits to various casks, how do you account for layering of the details? Obviously, early barrels may be more impactful. Do you experiment with this?
Yeah, well, Mac, thank you for the question. In the case of this style of aging, what we normally have in the amount of casks that we're using is different moments for those casks. That's mean we may have 10 years old Oloroso sherry cask. We may have 8 years old after using, I mean. So what we do is, along we move with new production, we replace those old ones to have new ones and to maintain the consistency in those barrels. It's a little bit different of the Solera and Criadera system that we were talking about before, because in that case, what you have is that different layers in the Solera will have different type of age, and we also move them, but all of them together. Here is a little bit different because the batches are smaller, obviously for the whiskey, or in the case of the Lepantos that we'll talk now. But this is mainly the way that we make. Even those casks are not done yet when they finish this process. They may be reused for some other purposes after that. But obviously we need to maintain the consistency and making sure that Nomad today, 3 years ago, or in 10 years, it will gonna taste exactly the same, because this is all about, but this is how we make it.
Can I jump in really quick, Alvaro? I'm sorry if I'm cutting you off, but I realized in the course of speaking about the distillates, and of course I'm sharing my own story here, this really is, for me at least, a really exciting 2.0 presentation that grew organically out of a presentation that we gave a little while ago that was really about the sherries and the vermouths of Gonzalez Bayas. And, I feel it would be remiss for me not to say that I'm in no way affiliated with Gonzalez Bayas. I've never had the pleasure of meeting him in person, but I can't wait to. But what I will say is I've, for a very long time, through my years in fine dining restaurants and bars, 11 Madison Park, Atera, Bethany, Oscar, I've been familiar with Gonzalez Bayas as a sherry producer specifically, and really enjoyed those sherries and not really thought too much about spirits or vermouths or anything outside of the sherries. And I say this only because I feel obligated to say that, a lot of people don't realize how much of a difference using good sherry can make. Using good vermouth as an example can make on a classic cocktail, like a Manhattan or like a Negroni, etc. It makes such a massive difference. And there's a whole spectrum of price points and quality and producers. Some come from Italy, some come from Spain, some come from France. United States is trying to get in the game as well. But the thing is, when I met, and I have to insist on saying that this is not about plugging your stuff. It's genuine truth. When I tried the Gonzalez Bayas La Copa Vermouth, the sweet vermouth especially, man, it is doing such an incredible job of satisfying everything that a great sweet vermouth should. So for anybody who's a fan of like Carpano Antica, which I am as well, or Coqui Vermouth de Torino, which I am as well, give a try. And you're a vermouth geek like I am as well. Give a try to the La Copa sweet vermouth, because it's such a special spirit and makes a tremendous Manhattan, makes a tremendous Negroni. And if you're just somebody who maybe makes those cocktails from time to time, and you just kind of get whatever the sweet vermouth is that's on sale, or you've had like the stock bottle or whatever for years and years, try stepping up your game and trying a really high quality crafted sweet vermouth, and you'll just be mind blown at how much of a difference it makes. Whether it's the Gonzalez Bayas or one of the other really exceptional sweet vermouths that's available, it's worth a try. It will elevate your cocktail game, and I truly believe that these vermouths and these sherries, they deserve to be in the conversation of the best spirits in these categories for sure.
Thank you. That's always great to hear, because especially a part of in the bartending in the spirit side as a producer of the industry, it's always great to have those feedbacks. We really believe in what we do. There's a family. This is a family company after almost 200 years, but it is still a family company in the 5th generation already. And funny enough is that we just rescue that recipe from the past. It was at the end of the 19th century with the recipe of the vermouth that you have on your right was created. We was produced for a time of 30, 35 years, and then we stopped producing it because of the different trends happening back in the days. Obviously, we're talking about a long time ago. And we came up with the same recipe because we tasted and we like it. And we said, like, well, this is different. And it have the 8 years old base sherry, which is that important. So when we talk about the sherries in general, sometimes people say like, well, yes, I know about sherry. I taste a sweet sherry once, or I taste a dry sherry once. But when you think all the influence that the sherry may have in food matching, in cocktail making, drinking by its own, influence experience, different spirits, reusing the sherry cask, there is a lot of things that are behind the sherry. And I saw a few comments already in the chat that they were interested in knowing more about the sherry. So definitely invite you to go deeper on sherry details, because there's so many good sherries around the market, especially here in the US, which is very important. And I'm sure that they will really enjoy. And everything here on the table today from our side is very present with the sherry. This seminar that is about thinking on the influence of the cask, we obviously use in sherry cask in the majority of the process that we follow, and this has an impact. And these sherry casks are just going to have a few words before introducing Lepanto, and then we go with the third cocktail. These sherry casks that we're using, or let's say casks, are from the beginning really important in the way that we are producing them, or building them. First of all, because when we look at the sherry cask that the Buddhists, let's say, cut here in the US, until this sherry cask is done and is not useful anymore, maybe we could go for 50, 60, 70 years, because it's going to be in use for sherry production for maybe 30, 40, 45 years, 50 years. Some of them could reach that long time, and then it can continue to offer the character to the spirit. So obviously the quality on the wood, the cask that we are building is a key point. As you may already imagine, what we are using is American oak barrels that we have different suppliers. In the past, we used to even make our own cask, but today what we have is a small cooperage to repair some of the casks that we have. But a few different suppliers, as Basima, for example, is one of our main suppliers there in Jerez. They will sort the wood from different states, normally from Missouri, Ohio, and Kentucky, where those the American oak is gonna be coming. Interesting, as I mentioned before, about the humidity that the cask has. I have it the note here because those specific percentage I tend to forget them. But when this wood is coming out of the sawmill, normally it's around 35% humidity. They will dry out a little bit the wood when sending it to Spain, in this case to Jerez. And when it's received, there will be a process that the different part of the wood, depending where they are going to be used, they will continue the drying process. In the case of the estates, the long part of the cask, they will go down to, excuse me for reading, but again, my memory is not very good. 16% is normally the humidity that we will have in the part of the wood that will go to the estate. And in the tops that they close the barrel, it will go 12, 13%. Why is this different? What we need to achieve is a percentage of humidity in the cask, which will allow to bend a little bit the estates, that they are normally this curved shape. And in the tops, what we need is something that is stronger. They don't need to bend, because when you look at a sherry cask or a sherry cellar with all the different casks, you will find that there is 4 different levels of cask all over the place. So in this case, we need a strength in that wood to definitely have this process perfectly well done. Depending the supplier, depending the type of idea that the winemaker, the sherry company have, the toasting process may change. We normally work in a medium toasting process. We don't have too strong flavors, but we need to think that actually with the sherry, it's important to think that the cask will spend a lot of time with the wine. And this is important. If we have powerful cask with a lot of things to offer to the cask, and we have inside a wine that is around 15, 16, 18, even 20% alcohol, the extraction may be too intense and it would not be balanced. That's one of the reasons why we use American oak instead of using other type of oak. Normally, the European oak will have a higher porosity. that will allow more liquid to get into the boot. Therefore, the extraction is going to be faster. When you're making a still wine, it could be okay because they will not spend that long time. But if you're going to have a sherry for 12 years, 15 years, together with the cask, the extraction may be too intense, and that's not what we want. Also, in the case of the American oak, it will bring a bit more complexity in the aromas that we get and the flavor that will be transferred to the wine, which will be dominant. The vanilla notes that at the end will blend with the base of the sherry, with the toasted notes that they are coming, the nutty flavors that the proper dry sherry may have, or in the sweet style, the raisin, the date, all those small details are going to be special. Just to finish with the words about the sherry casks that we are using, they are normally 600 liter capacity. They may be a small amount in every batch that is produced, a few 500 liter capacity, just because of maximizing the boot that is purchased is the only reason. But yeah, I think that those details hopefully are interesting for all of our friends following today, to see how the boot is arriving, how it's manufactured to build the cask, how is the process, and how the combination between the sherry and the boot together will make a beautiful liquid, which is the main purpose, but it will also have a beautiful container to continue producing so another different liquid as we have. Why, and with that I finish this part, then we'll be back with more detail about the Lepanto. Why majority of the sherry producer are brandy the Jerez producer as well? For a simple reason. Sherry wine is a fortified wine category. Fortified means fortification, mean addition of alcohol, grape alcohol. If you need to produce alcohol, you need to have alembics, because you need to make distillation. And you also have on the other side a ton of sherry casks that has been used for the aging of your wines. So if you have the alcohol producer, you have wine that is going to be the base of make this distillation, and you have the cask, the equation is very simple. You have the perfect moment, the perfect place to make the production of brandy. From our company, the brandy has been produced since 1846, is the first reference that we have of producing brandy. And until today, although things have evolved, have changed, we keep doing in the same way with the same passion and understanding that if you want to make a good brandy, you need to focus on the quality of the grape, the raw material that you will have at first, the distillation process, obviously, but really important, the cask that you select. Either Tio Pepe, either cream sherry, either PX, either Oloroso, all of them will need to be combined in the proper way to maximize the character that we will have. And Lepanto, that offers 3 different type of brandy, is a great example of that. So now I look forward to see the next cocktail, although I see already the recipe and looks amazing, and then we'll come back with some more details about the Lepanto production.
Before we jump into the cocktail, and I know we're talking a lot and not making drinks necessarily yet again, but if I may, Alvaro, can I bounce an idea off of you, or at least a concept, and you let me know whether or not this is true of your wines and your whiskeys and your brandies, etc. But I think that for myself, when I started learning about wines and whiskeys and aging and casks and all of these things years ago, I didn't completely understand the role of wood, the role of a cask, and even further, I didn't understand that it could actually have more than one role. And whenever I started learning more about the aging of different wines and spirits, etc., it really opened up a new world for me in terms of my understanding of the cask and what it can offer to a wine or spirit. And then, as an example, we think about bourbon, right? Bourbon, by law in America, must be aged in new charred American oak barrels. And if it's not, it is not a bourbon, right? And that means you take a tree, you chop it up, you let it dry, you let it age, you assemble it into a barrel, you fire it at a cooperage, and then you throw some whiskey in it. And then within a very short amount of time, it has extracted a tremendous amount of color and tannin and flavor, all of these things and aromas from the barrel. And then the amount of time you rest it is entirely up to the producer of that whiskey, right? It's a very primary relationship between the distillate and the barrel. And for me, as a young bartender and spirits enthusiast, I thought that that's what all spirits did and all wines did in cask. But in fact, when you talk about, wines and spirits that are aged for 10, 20, 30, 40 years in a barrel, in a cask, and some of these casks are very, very, very old, there's a different relationship, as I perceive it, between the cask and the spirit that's in it, the wine or spirit that's in it. And in fact, oftentimes it's less about the influence of the oak or the cask specifically, but more about it allowing the wine or spirit to have a relationship with oxygen and to actually breathe and oxidize in a positive way. You know, with Palo Cortado and Amontillado and Oloroso sherries considered, right? So it's less about, you know, there's a bunch of barrel characteristics being imparted into the wine or into the spirit, but more about the cask actually is a breathable environment, right? Where the sherry or spirit can actually exchange oxygen and breathe and organically grow and age. And that's very different, because in one case, it's a brand new barrel that's freshly charred, that's giving all of that flavor and energy, etc., to the spirit. And the other hand, it's a very old barrel, perhaps, that is just simply allowing the wine or spirit to rest and integrate and spend time and breathe a little bit through the wood itself, right? To have an oxygen exchange and to oxidize. And for that reason, what I thought was interesting, you know, this is a brand new bottle, and this is a 2-year-old bottle. Never seen wood, never spent time on oak, and it's just 2 years in a bottle. And over time, that oxygen will actually darken a spirit. It could be anything, whether it's a wine or a spirit, it could be anything. And that oxygen will actually develop whatever is in the bottle, whatever's in the barrel, and result in a darker, richer, deeper, more intense flavor profile. So I guess my whole point is just to sort of plant the seed with anybody who's listening and watching that barrel and cask don't necessarily just mean that things taste like oak. In fact, oftentimes, especially when it comes to oak aging or barrel aging or cask aging for a very long time, it may have almost nothing to do with the spirit tasting like the barrel, but rather the barrel allowing the wine or spirit to actually exchange with the outside world and develop inside, because it's a porous and sort of like living environment. I don't know, is that fair? I just kind of put you on the spot.
Absolutely, it is, and I think that even a necessary point that I didn't mention about the sherry aging.
I got your back, baby.
First of all, it is that we never use new wood that is just arrived after the corporate process. We put it in touch with the final wine that we are selling. It doesn't happen this way in Jerez. We need a process of approximately a couple of years, which is what we call the seasoning. In Spanish is a word that, well, I think that seasoning will make the job, which is putting some base wine that may be used later for distillation, for example. We have the extraction of the first impact of the new wood. Some type of wines will appreciate a lot. Some red wines that are said like, well, this is a spectacular quality, is all new French oak, and that's what they need, because the alcohol content of the wine is lower, the time that the wine is spent with the oak is lower. So for that purpose, absolutely makes sense. But here, thinking what we have, it doesn't make sense to make it that way. If we put a new cask that just arrived from the corporate in contact with that 18% alcohol by volume Oloroso, the extraction of the wood will be super intense. We cannot, by any chance, leave it together for 8 years, because when you get here, it will be a lot of wood that is not going to be nice. In fact, this little boy that I have here, Tio Pepe, have no notes of wood. When you smell it, when you have all this character, have spent almost 5 years in contact with the oak, but doesn't have woody character at all, because what we find here is different, and the way of using it is different. The alcohol of Tio Pepe is only 15, when in an Oloroso is 18. Lower alcohol, less extraction. So this is also difference that we find. Another point that you mentioned that is super important is the transpiration. We can call it that way. A key point for us in natural method that we keep using since the beginning of the company back in the 19th century is to control humidity and temperature as much as we can. Because if we have an environment with high temperature and low humidity, the evaporation that is happening is going to be very intense. Why normally sherries will concentrate alcohol by natural process during the aging by not doing anything? For the simple reason of the evaporation. We control it to have an average of 4.5% alcohol, water evaporation, or evaporation of the cask a year. And what we are mainly losing is water, just because the molecule of the water is smaller of the molecule of the alcohol. So it will go through the oak much easier. So we lose more water than we do with the alcohol. when we age the spirits, if this is 65%, the content of water is much smaller than in a wine that is 15. So the concentration that you may have here is much smaller because there is no that many chances for the water to evaporate and to have this concentration. Of course, if you leave it for super long time, you will get it eventually, but it's not the same. So all those details that you very well mentioned are super important because, as you said, it's not just controlling what this type of food is going to give to the liquid, but also is how is this interaction? How much are you evaporating? Because evaporation means concentration. Extraction from the oak is not just the character of the wood, as you very well said. Maybe when you go for a first wine touching a wood, yes, but when you are reusing X wine cask in spirits, the extraction is not just character of the oak, it's character of the oak plus the wine that is inside. In the case of the Lepanto, that we have 3 different type of brandy. We have one brandy, which is the regular one, the Lepanto Classic, as we call it, Solera Gran Reserva. It has 9 years aging in Tío Pepe cask. It has 3 years aging in 30 years old cream sherry. The content of sugar is 19 grains of residual sugar per liter. Then we have another brandy, which is exactly the same base, but it's 12 years of Tío Pepe plus 3 years in dry oloroso. Tío Pepe and dry oloroso are dry style of wine. Guess what is the sugar content? Is 7 grains per liter. And the other one was 19. It's a huge difference what we have just by changing the cask. And then when you go for the PX, which is Tío Pepe and PX cask, although the base is exactly the same for the 3 brandy, sorry, the content of sugar is around 23. So we have the same beginning, different cask that we apply, and the sugar is 19, 7, and 23. Wow, it's super important to understand that when you use new cask, the extraction will be based on the character of the wood, plus the transferring, the evaporation and everything that you mentioned. But when you are using X whatever cask, you have the influence of the wood, but whatever was inside is going to be added to your product. So that's important as well.
Ta-da!
That.
You ready for the next drink, my friend? Okay, cool. So the next drink is one that I think is a lot of fun, personally. You know, there are essentially 2 styles of old fashions in the world. And that's making a very broad statement, but nonetheless, 2 styles. There's the old fashioned that we all know and love. I know and love myself. That is, you know, whiskey stirred with sugar and bitters, garnished with a orange lemon twist, sometimes both, and some ice, right? It's very simple. There's all sorts of lore and stories, and you know, there's arguments and gnashing of teeth and anger about what the traditional old fashioned is. Of course, we just did a competition, a tasting competition with the New York Cocktail Expo about the old fashioned. This style of old fashioned that I am about to make is the more controversial of the 2. And that is sort of like the Midwest brandy old fashioned, that if you go to Wisconsin, a Wisconsin style supper club and you order an old fashioned, this is what you're more likely to get. Sometimes whenever you go to any city in the world and you order an old fashioned, you might end up with something that's whiskey with soda water, muddled with orange and cherries and some brown sugar at best. And then there's ice thrown on top of it. And it's somewhere between like a real old fashioned and like a highball with all the sort of weird fruit salad going on, and nobody wants that. I completely get it. But I said to myself, we're making cocktails with brandy, and they're exceptional brandies. They're brandies that have muscle and weight. This isn't a lighthearted brandy. And while there are curves, and I think that there's some beauty to this, it also has a lot of muscle, right? So from my perspective, I thought to myself, what would happen if we tried to merge this idea of a traditional old-fashioned with a brandy old-fashioned from the Midwest of the United States? And I know there are some folks that are calling in from overseas. So just to clarify, Midwest of the United States, we have brandy old-fashioned traditions here that are often frowned upon by the greater cocktail community. And that normally consists, again, of some sort of brandy with soda water and orange and cherries that have been muddled, sometimes shaken. And then there's a bunch of ice on top, and it's sort of like a muddled fruit salad, weird cocktail, right? And so I thought to myself, let's try to make something that gives honor and gives acknowledgement, not just to this spirit, but also the tradition of making brandy old fashions. So with that in mind, we're going with 1.5 ounces of the Lepanto PX, the Pedro Jimenez Gran Reserva brandy. Excellent sort of raisin and rich, salty, nutty qualities to this particular spirit. With 1.5 ounces of Rockies as well. Because this Midwest old fashioned is traditionally muddled with orange slices, citrus slices, right? I thought it'd be appropriate to add some acidity, add some fruit, add some bright, refreshing qualities as well. So equal parts there. It's essentially a split base. But we are going to, instead of muddling with cherries, because for me, like, sipping a cocktail through a straw or even just off the rim that has like chunky elements to it and it's like getting caught in the straw, it's cumbersome and it's not very silky. It's not a very thought out cocktail experience, right? So I wanted to eliminate that. That said, using Luxardo Maraschino cherry juice. And the thing is, most of the time whenever people buy these cherries, they throw out the juice, which is a tragedy. There's so much of it in the container and it deserves to be used. And I'm going to use 1/2 ounce of it. And like, there's one cherry that's like fighting to get into the jigger right now. And I'm like really gonna do my best to keep it in the jar, but you can probably see it pouring, right? So we're gonna use 1/2 ounce of the Luxardo Maraschino cherry juice or syrup. If you are like me and you're buying Luxardo Maraschino or Fabri also makes phenomenal Amarena cherries. Save the juice. The juice is like delicious. And it's often made from the juice of the cherries, right? We're not talking about maraschino, that sort of like weird, like vibrant neon colored nonsense. We're talking about like actual proper cherries. And that 1/2 ounce of juice here, the 1/2 ounce of syrup that these cherries are actually stored in and preserved in, right? That really brings that richness and the character we're looking for that we'd otherwise see perhaps in the Midwest if you're muddling the cherries into the drink, right? So we're trying to accomplish an elegant, dynamic cocktail by integrating the brandy, the freshness of the Rockies, which is kind of, again, playing the part of the well-intentioned, but I think kind of sloppy orange that's muddled in, and the cherry juice, the cherry syrup of the maraschino cherries, the Fabra Amarena cherries, is playing the role of the cherry that's muddled in, but just bringing the fruit and bringing the richness and bringing the sweetness, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to just give this a quick little stir to integrate it. And like, I think the sort of like icing on the cake in terms of the insult to injury of those Midwest old fashions is adding way too much seltzer, because it's just not supposed to be a highball. Highballs, whiskey highballs, brandy highballs, perhaps, they're great. But that's not what this is supposed to be. This is supposed to be a true old fashioned. So we're going to use just a splash, just a really good splash of seltzer, because that's going to wake it all up. There's supposed to be fruit here. It's supposed to be refreshing, but it's not supposed to be a highball, right? It's not supposed to be a Collins. So we're going to add one good splash, and that's it, of seltzer, and a couple dashes of Angostura bitters. We used this a little bit earlier. Couple dashes of Angostura bitters, and that's it, right? So we have our brandy, we have our sweet, rich cherry juice, cherry syrup, we have our Rockies, which serves the purpose of bringing lightness and freshness to the drink, and just one good splash of seltzer that will bring this drink to the next level. And you'll see, usually whenever you get an old fashioned in the Midwest, it's like ice floating on top with these dead bodies of like the chunks of orange and cherry sort of like scattered around like there was a battle that nobody was excited about. And then you have like a ton of weird liquid on the bottom. This is ice, bottom to top. This is a proper drink that has muscle, it has flavor, it's not overly dilute. This is not a Collins. This isn't filled to the top with soda water. This is still a proper old fashioned, right? But it's got a little bit more life to it. And for me, I really enjoy garnishing this with kind of a variation on a flag. A flag, for those of you who don't know, is an orange slice, traditionally an orange slice. Where did I put my cherries? An orange slice that is folded and skewered with a cherry. So what we're gonna do is, you guys just saw me express an orange twist over this drink. I'm going to take our cherry and I'm going to garnish it through, or stab it through the orange twist, right? So we have all the components of a classic Midwest American old fashioned, but we've elevated it and we've taken what makes sense. We've taken the cherry, but we've done it right. We've taken the cherry juice, right? We've taken the brandy, but shit, this is good brandy, right? We've taken the freshness of fruit, but we brought it through a liqueur that's not going to jam our straws up and jam our teeth up with like pulp and weirdness, right? And we've used soda, but only a little bit to lengthen and dilute the cocktail just enough, right? That's the point. And the bitters, of course, is there. So we have all the elements, but it's done the way we should have done it to begin with. So cheers to you. I hope you make this at home or wherever the hell you're drinking. It's a delicious drink and it's a proper cocktail.
Cheers. It looks definitely great. And I love all this explanation when you're making it, because also
Making it all up, bro. How am I doing?
Now you're doing great, obviously, but it's important for me that because obviously this is a learning session for me, as every tasting anything that I make working, because when you apply what you're mentioning about that particular drink, the concept that you are describing is the same concept that you can use for any other type of drinks with different ingredients, but it's the same thinking of that. And what you said about man, I'm from Spain, where the gin and tonic used to have 1 million ingredients inside, and at the end you end up drinking, but you have a piece of cardamom seed, and then you have a juniper berry, and then you have some pepper from I don't know, from the moon, and so like, guys, think that everything that you put inside need to make sense, but also need to think that the person is supposed to drink it. And you cannot be having a drink with friends and every 5 seconds you are having like, what is this? What is this? And I love this that you mentioned, because not everywhere you find it, but when you do, it looks that, or it means that the person making the drink or designing the drink has been thinking, well, this need to be drunk and need to be enjoyed. That's what about, no? Good taste, but also pleasant experience.
Absolutely. Hey Matt, I'm curious. Is anybody commenting in the chat that I've offended them deeply? Are they from Wisconsin or some Minnesota or something, some place that does brandy old fashions, and they think that I've ripped off their cultural heritage and they want to see me crucified or something? Matt's in the bathroom. That's okay.
Welcome back later.
All right. Should we talk about
yeah, let's well, Minnesota. Now you learn. No, now Mark Clendery was commenting. Now, as far as I see, I have here the laptop with trying to read some of the message, but there is a great conversation about different things that we're talking about. So this is great, and we appreciate all those comments and interaction. I'm gonna just briefly describe the 3 expressions of Lepanto Brandy, why we make it, how we make it, and what was the origin of making it this way, before we go for the last cocktail, because also we want to have some minutes for question, right? Although people has been already interacting, but I'll try to make it short. So I mentioned already that we have 3 brandies bored in the same process that have different level of sugar. This is not the most important, but it's a good proof to understand how important was the cast. In this case, Lepanto, Gran Reserva, Solera Gran Reserva, all of them are on the category Solera Gran Reserva, which is the highest, that require at least 3 years of aging. Obviously here with 12, 15, and 15 years of aging, we go much longer time that is required by the Regulatory Council of the Brandy de Jerez. But why the same why the company will do with the same base, which is 100% Palomino Fino wine, which is a great varietal, the same that we use for Tio Pepe. The process of making brandy, I'm sure that everybody have it in mind. If not, I will go briefly how we make it. Hand pick of the grapes. We are gonna make the harvest a little bit earlier because what we need is a higher point of acidity in this mast from the grapes in order to follow the process and the production of the Lepanto as our master distiller and winemaker, as well as a background. Luis Miguel Trillo has, since the 80s, he has been in charge of the production of the brandy. So wine, mast will be extracted by pressing process, obviously, pneumatic press. The mast will be totally fermented into wine, around 12% alcohol by volume wine. But that's the point where the sherry will have the addition of alcohol. Here, there is no fortification because we are going to distill this base wine. So there is no point to make a fructification. What we do, it will be a double distillation in pot still. It will be two alembics, symmetric alembics that we have in Jerez they belong to the region of Chaldignac in Cognac. Double distillation, that means the wine will go to the alembic. We will apply the heat. We will do the first distillation. In the second one, we will divide between the head, the heart, and the tails. We will use mainly the heart part, but we will re-distill part of the head in order to complete what we want in the brandy. The other part are discard. The tail, which is the last one, it will have heavier components, less volatile, totally different aromas and taste. This is important as well to make it, because you cannot use bad quality alcohol, bad distill, and think that if you spend money on a sherry cask of good quality or any other type of cask of good quality, it will make magic and the result will be great. No, obviously you need to look after every process. Today, we put more emphasis in the last moment in the aging, but just because this is about the webinar, no, it's about talking about the cask and the influence. That being said, when the brandy is ready, before aging, it will be 100% Palomino Fino, twice distilled, using the heart, the middle part. The alcohol content will be around 62, 68 alcohol by volume, a percentage of alcohol by volume. This is when the aging is starting. Normally, because we are using a cask that has been in use for such a long time, what we have is to maintain the alcohol content as the same alcohol content that is coming out of the alembic in order to have higher alcohol, more extraction. Keep in mind that a sherry cask that has been aged in Tío Pepe for 20 years have a lot of things to tell you, but we need to have a point of alcohol that is extracting enough. If we go for a higher percentage of alcohol, maybe too much, and it will not be balanced. So that's the job of the master distillers, to find exactly this process of interaction between the alcohol that is into the cask and the type of cask that we are using. All of the brandies, to make it easier and to keep some time for question, it will be starting in the same. We will be starting in Tío Pepe. The classic brandy Lepanto will go for 9 years on Tío Pepe cask. It will be following the Solera and Criadera system. We had this question before, very good question. In this case, yes, mandatorily, we need to follow the Solera and Criadera system. And after 9 years aging in Tío Pepe, we apply the last 3 years in former cream sherry. Not any kind of cream sherry. We use Matusalem, which is our 30 years old cream sherry. It's a spectacular. It's a blend of dry and sweetness, has character, vanilla, some dates, some hints of raisin. It's super, super interesting type of wine. It will be considered a sweet wine, not the sweetest, but sweet wine enough. That's why the result of these 12 years of aging, it will be our brandy with, again, 17 grams of residual sugar per liter, which is the content that we have in Lepanto. The Lepanto Oloroso Viejo, the OV, Oloroso Viejo means dry, all oloroso. I'm forgetting even the Spanish. We go for 12 years of Tío Pepe cask. Again, Tío Pepe is a dry style of wine, so it will not be adding sweetness to the brandy. It will be adding character, extraction of pure Tío Pepe, but it will not be adding the sweetness. And we complete the last 3 years to complete 15. Now it's 15, not 12 in total, with dry Oloroso vintage. It's a special type of Oloroso. It's not the regular Alfonso. It's a special selection of the best cask. The production of Lepanto Oloroso Viejo is smaller. So we go for such a special cask to finish the Lepanto. What do we have at the end? In terms of sugar, 7 grains of residual sugar per liter, much drier than the other one. But the beginning was the same. What is the difference? Is the cask that we are applying. It will not just be sugar, obviously. It will be character. It will be the addition, the extraction that we are getting. Probably you will not get a lot of raisin or a lot of figs in that brandy because it's not having this type of former cask in the aging. To finish, the last one, which is the Lepanto Pedro Jimenez, it will be again 15 years in total, starting by 12 years of Tío Pepe cask. This is common for all of them starting Tío Pepe, to be complete with the last 3 years in Noé, which is our 30 years old, 100% Pedro Jimenez. A wine that after 30 years, it will have 15.5% of alcohol by volume and 425 grains of residual per liter, grains per liter. So this is obviously a different. The resulting brandy will have the same origin, but different influence. To get there, we'll get up to 23 grains of residual sugar per liter. And you can see how the beginning is the same, but the path that you follow will make it totally different. Just to finish, this was a project from our research center that we have in Gonzalez Villas, that they were working on the influence of the cask in the spirits aging. The result was such an interesting result that we decided to apply this to the line of Lepanto and have Lepanto Classic, Lepanto All Try Oloroso, and Lepanto Pedro Jimenez, starting with the same, finishing in so many different ways. How to enjoy them? Either by its own, the three of them are delicious, will be different profile of consumer that will most likely prefer one or another. When making drinks, thinking in those differences will maximize what you have inside.
All right. That was a fucking breath, man. Breathe in. Nicely.
Thank you. I think that was kind of clear the example, right, of what we do
Yeah, it was
and what we
awesome.
get at the end, right?
Yeah, it was awesome. Do we have Matt back or no? Did Matt leave us? Did he desert us?
No.
Are the lunatics running the insane asylum right now?
No, I think that he's around. I can see the screen, maybe some connection problem. I still think that people is following us.
All right, well, that's good. So I'm going to start making this next cocktail because this cocktail, unlike most cocktails, requires a minute to take a nap. We have to give the cocktail a minute to take a nap, and then we're gonna wake it back up. So okay, so I'm gonna start making this drink, and I'll share why our cocktail needs to take a nap momentarily. So we have 1.5 ounces of Lepanto Oloroso brandy, and I like this particular brandy in this drink because it's nutty and oxidative. The qualities that I associate with an Oloroso sherry are present in the brandy as well. And where the last cocktail we used, the Pedro Jimenez, the sort of rich, fruit-forward, dried fruit, again, thinking about the sort of dried fruit nature, the candied quality of the Pedro Jimenez, made sense in the old-fashioned, the Midwest old-fashioned. I wanted to go sort of nutty and oxidative for this upcoming cocktail. This is really good. You guys got to try it. It's delicious. Okay, so we have 1.5 ounces of the Lepanto Oloroso sherry. Again, we're doing a split base here of my own juice. 1.5 ounces of this stuff, Rockies. And we're going to then add 3/4 ounce because this is America. And if I can just say, I'm grateful for all of you. It's just after Thanksgiving. We're going 3/4 ounce of really, really high quality maple syrup, Vermont maple syrup. I grabbed a bottle that had a Vermont maple leaf on it just for this. So 3/4 ounce of Vermont maple syrup, although you could use whatever high quality maple syrup you have kicking around. We're doing 1 ounce of heavy cream. For you cocktail geeks at home, I know you're already thinking about what this cocktail is a riff on. But joke's on you. We're gonna take a left turn in a minute. We have 1/2 ounce of lemon. We only need 1/2 ounce of lemon for this because we're not looking for this to be a sour, and also there's quite a bit of citrus here. We add our last ingredient, a whole egg. Whole egg as opposed to an egg white. You might think that an egg white is the most appropriate thing here, but a whole egg is what we're going for. And I'll tell you why. Because when we're working with a brown spirit and we're working with these robust, rich flavors, we're working with maple syrup, that little bit of additional fat that comes from an egg yolk really makes a difference. So we're wanting to accentuate the rich, robust, nutty, round flavors. There he is. There's Matt Curry. He doesn't know that his microphone is still muted, but it's fine. There he is. Welcome back, buddy.
Thank you, guys. We had a little bit of internet thing, but I felt you guys were cruising, and I'm watching, and it seemed like it was happening. So
yeah,
I just let you go.
We were sharing baby pictures of you. We were talking about all sorts of stuff. It was great. It was really great. In fact, I mean, if we'd had 45 more seconds, who knows what would have happened. But welcome back. Thank you for being here. We're about to make a delicious cocktail that I think is the sort of the epicenter or the perfect sort of like, you guys have seen like the Star Trek thing with the bands, the cross, or is it like whatever, doesn't matter. So like we're crossing between two worlds, between refreshing and rich. That's what it's going to be. That's what's going to happen. So I'm going to now, this is important. This is really important. We're going to take 2 cubes of ice, 2 very modest cubes of ice, and we're going to toss them into our tin with the egg, the whole egg, and we're going to whip this. We're going to whip it like it did something wrong.
Nice.
We have a chilled highball glass that has been in my freezer this whole time. You guys didn't even know it's there. It's been there this whole time. None of you even saw this coming. I know this is a big reveal. It's like when the magician saws the lady in half, you know? This happened.
I always wonder how they did that trick.
I know, right? Okay, so now we take this chilled highball glass and we add about 1.5 ounces or so. We don't want to go too heavy. About 1.5 ounces or so of soda to that glass. And we properly shake our cocktail, right?
That's when people clap normally.
And let's see if you guys can see this. It jumps because it hits the carbonation. So we want to pour very aggressively up front, letting the cocktail react to the carbonation in the soda and the seltzer. And then we want to back off the gas and let it pour very slowly while that foam builds, right? Really gentle. And then once the cocktail's been poured, we take a break.
Eamon, I'm gonna use that break for a question that's me having the question.
Perfect.
Matt, I'm sorry, I'm jumping to send you the question. I'm going directly. I know the guy that is making the cocktail, that's why. Now there is a question because also Andrew was talking about the shake that you were doing, which he defined as semi-dry shake at some point, because we're used to seeing that, I'm asking, that's my question. The dry shakes, either with anything or with any tool inside, that then you remove, you put the ice and you make it. I guess that the purpose of these couple of cubes is to have something solid inside that help you to make the emulsion inside, or?
The idea.
I've never seen that. I think that is super, super cool.
I mean, it's something that I think Jane Danger taught me. Jane Danger comes from PDT lore and world. You know, if I'm not, and that was like 10, 12 years ago, it was just crazy. So yeah, you know, you have a dry shake that incorporates the ingredients, but it doesn't chill. And then you have a normal shake, which chills and incorporates, but there's a lot of dilution very quickly. For me, shaking with a couple of cubes incorporates at a much more rapid level because you actually have a solid thing in there bouncing around with the liquid, especially eggs, right? Whenever you're trying to incorporate a whole egg or even just an egg white, you know, using a couple of ball bearings, like, you know, that's what these are. It's like shaking up a can of paint, right? That's what this is, right? It's like shaking up a can of paint with a little ball bearing in there. And it helps to really emulsify all of those ingredients while giving you a little booster seat in terms of chill and dilution. So that technique for me is extraordinarily valuable. And I think more bartenders should use it. I don't know the name of it, to be frank. I thought about, because like there's the dry shake, there's the wet shake. Like, what is this, a fucking damp shake? Like, that sounds gross. Nobody wants that. So for me, I don't know the answer, but I think this is a technique that's worth investigating. It works extremely well. And whenever you're making fizzes like this, and this is sort of a play, and kind of what I was getting at earlier, this is sort of a play on a Ramos gin fizz, kind of, sort of, maybe, but there's a whole egg, but there is still the cream, there is still the citrus, we have the base spirit, but instead of it being gin, Tom gin in particular, we're using brandy, right? So we have a proper holiday cocktail. I like to let this sit. I like to let it take a nap for a minute, not so I can add more soda as I would if this were Ramos, but so I can let that head build up, so I can let that foam build up. And I know this is tough because we're all on computer screens right now, but you can really see this buildup of foam that's right there. And then once that foam is built up, right before I serve myself the drink, I'm going to finish this with nutmeg. Super, super fresh, delicious nutmeg. And I said earlier that my favorite drink of the bunch was that Boulevardier variation, but I really think this also is my favorite of the drinks we made. It's super delicious. It's the right way to finish a gathering of friends and long-term family. Thank you very much. I don't have anything more to add from a drink perspective. I'm going to drink this and listen to you guys. But I assure you this is delicious. But I look forward to hearing more from both Alvaro and Matt. But Matt, you got to take yourself off mute.
Yeah, I keep it on mute so that my face doesn't show up while you're talking. This is why I love it. You've got the right fizz face. You've got the, the fizz on your mustache. Now I want to drink it. Fizz is one of my favorite drinks. You're right. You got to let it separate. Let it sit for a bit, right? You get the head. This is when folks pour the soda in, you get that lift, but that's a beautiful looking drinks. I love your drinks. I love the glassware. I'm inspired. We've got a lot of stuff going on in the messages right now. Somebody said about the recipe that we have listed. They said the recipe on NYCE website says that the base spirit for the maple fizz is 1.5 ounce Lepanto PX Gran Reserva. Is that correct?
I'm so sorry. That's my fault. I'm an idiot. I don't know how to type. I thought that PX and Oloroso were spelled the same. And so I literally typed them the same exact way. When in fact, I now know that PX in the second instance is spelled Oloroso. So that's my fault. I just don't know how to spell, and I'm an idiot. I'm sorry.
Thank you for taking your time to make the recipes, but I guess we'll update that. Or we have the link for the recipes here in the chat and everything. And we can go ahead. We're going to do a follow-up email so you guys can see all the spirits and the right ways to get it. And are you guys going to be making these cocktail recipes at home, you think? You guys think you're going to give these a shot? What do you think? And which drink did you guys like the best so far? Yes, Spencer says yes.
I will do them, and I look forward to use I'm gonna call the Imon shake because I was very impressed about that detail, and I look forward to try. Hopefully somebody else. I read that somebody mentioned that want to try this method, and I will use it, but I will mention obviously the person who
next time set up your bar. We could do it together, man.
Semi-dry shake.
Rockey's shake.
I get really nerdy about those shakes, man. I love to go dry and then ice and then dry again. You know what I mean? And then you get really silly heads going on. But your shoulder's going to hurt after a little while. But man, we do like the effect we get of that beautiful meringue, right? So good stuff. So we're doing some Q&A. You guys taking questions?
Sure.
Alvaro, do you have more to speak to the spirits? As far as anything?
I would rather if people have some more question or any comments, I will really appreciate them. Just to even comments if they taste it, if they know it or not, or anything that I can try to answer. We did what we do. Hopefully that was feeling what people was expecting in terms of not just describing our products. From my side, obviously, we have enjoyed as well Imon cocktail making and Rockey's explanation, which I personally really like it. But in our side, it's more to link the experience and to try to get closer to understanding the process of making the spirits, which probably some other person may focus on the other part, which is the beginning, the grain, the malt that you're using, the process, the barley, everything that you're making. In our case, we decided to go for this one that hopefully has been helpful to link to the cocktail making as well, and to have the experience by the hand of these three different products like Lepanto, Nomad, and Rockies that they wove together. Super cool.
Super cool. I mean, it's a great combination. We have these great spirits, and you've got Aim and Rockey making drinks. So I don't know if it gets better than that.
It could. It really could.
Well, I'm always
could if he shared the drinks through the screen, just getting it close. I can grab it here from the iPad. It would be just perfect. So let's say that is a 9.5 over 10.
Is not what it used to be, but I think I saw a question about shaking. Did you see that come through as well?
So there's just folks making comments about this, and I'll just kind of go back. We're talking about so no dry shake here, semi-dry shake, I guess. That's Andrew saying about that. Thank you, Alvaro and Eamon, for that semi-dry shake explanation. Okay, super cocktail. That's Mark. I can't wait to try this one. Awesome. Mark's into it. Spencer says yes, wants to try these drinks. You got to get Lepanto and Nomad and Rockies. Yeah, it's like a triple threat right there, right?
Yeah.
Tanya, she's like, yes. Kim, yes, need to get my hand on some Rockies first. Yes, you do. Yeah. Dave, yes, the eggnog like one that you just did sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, right. Especially like now we got the holiday season going on. It's a totally different year. And you know what's funny is like you're realizing more and more the importance of the people that you spend time with and the spirit that you bring to the occasion, the energy that you bring to the occasion. And when you have like these almost conversational cocktails with aged spirits like the ones we have and these great drinks, I mean, now's the time to be doing this stuff for this holiday season, right? We want to get excited. We want to bring the spirit, and making these drinks and having these spirits is just going to add to our holidays. So happy holidays to you guys. Happy holidays to everybody at home. And with that, if there's more questions, guys, please put them in now because we are coming to a close, right, guys? And check out what's going on at nycocktailexpo.com. We have the best cocktail of the year and the Tiki Throwdown competitions happening right now. So you can support those bars. Andrew Gelb says, can we get the refrigeration after opening Rockies? Oh, he has a question. Do you have to refrigerate Rockies after you open it like a vermouth?
No, you don't have to. If you'd like it to stay really bright and light and fresh, once opened, then put it in the fridge. It'll remain for a longer period of time at least, exactly as it was as you opened it. But just like any wine or any sherry or any vermouth, it will begin to oxidize once you introduce more oxygen into the bottle. So, my opinion, I actually really enjoy it whenever I crack open a new bottle. I use it for a few drinks. I let it sit on my counter and it oxidizes over the course of a couple of days or a week or so. And you'll actually see the color start to change slightly, but it will happen at room temperature once opened. And that's a fun evolution of the bottle, but it will never go bad. It will never go bad. Like I said, this isn't barrel, man. That's just oxygen. That's all that is. That's just time in bottle and oxygen, just like any great sherry, any great wine, etc. So don't worry about refrigerating for stability sake. But if you want to keep it really clean, really fresh, really bright, pop it in the fridge. If you don't and you want to see it evolve, keep it on the countertop. You'll be fine.
That's amazing. And thank you, Mark. Clendenin says, Matt, thank you to you and the guys for a great set of experiences with all these events this week. We've had New York Cocktail Expo Online Week. As I said before, you rock. Thanks for a great week. Donna Crawbuck says, don't forget, guys, the cocktail competitions are heating up this week. The webinars have come to a close, but all the cocktail competitions. If you have any questions about New York Cocktail Expo, if you're a bartender, please sign up for 2021 competitions. Eamon Rockey is our executive judge of Best Cocktail of the Year this year. Have you gotten any of the cocktail kits yet?
Not yet, Matt.
Okay. Well, we got to get those kits to you, man, because we're going to have a winner.
I know, right?
Yeah. Lots of fun. Alvaro, I want to say thank you to you and Gonzalez Bias. And
I also want to say thank you to Alvaro.
Yes, a big thank you.
I want to say something as well, just a second, with regard to what you just guys talk about it. Eamon, I normally have it in the fridge, I have to tell you, because I like it sipping better cold than on ice. I don't know if this is correct or not, but
really?
I find it that by its own.
Cool, man.
Temperature as it is now, in my opinion, maximize when it's chill in the refrigerator. And I have poured sometimes even when cooking and everything. And I have to say that I'm not very fan of sweet flavor, but the point of acidity that it has, it makes it for me super interesting. And a little bit in a wine glass, but when it's chill, I enjoy it a lot.
Thanks, bro. I really appreciate it. All right, so I guess this is thank you to all of our attendees. To my collaborator and partner in crime now for the second time, and to our host, Mr. Matt Curry, who brings the rain every year, no matter what, with New York Cocktail Expo. So thanks, everybody.
Cool. Thank you,
From
everybody.
here as well. Matt,
Here.
thank you very much. Imon, has been absolutely a pleasure once again, learning, enjoying, and having a great time. Hopefully, we can soon make one in person. And just want to say thank you to everybody that has joined, the question, the interest, and wishing the best for this vacation for Christmas time to everybody. Stay safe and enjoy. Now we have a lot of information to enjoy, a lot of recipes to reproduce at home. It's a great time to do it.
That's right. And for everybody, we're gonna keep you in touch with our wonderful instructors today. So if you want to taste any of these spirits, let's get you guys in touch. Go ahead and write me back, and we'll connect everybody. Okay. But until then, cheers, happy holidays, and have a pleasant evening. Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
Take care.